Hello everyone, welcome to a new lesson, Deep Waters by William Douglas, explained by Deepshikha ma'am. We'll be covering this lesson in two videos. Let's begin.
Deep Waters. The summary. The writer begins the story by informing us that he had decided to learn swimming at YMCA pool in Yakima when he was only 10 or 11 years old. The YMCA pool was not dangerous as it was only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end and 9 feet deep at the other. The author reveals his first fearful experience in the water when he was barely 3 or 4 years old, when his father took him to the beach in California. He hung on to his father, but still the powerful waves knocked him down and swept him over. The terror of the overpowering force of waves was inflicted in his heart. When he enrolled himself for swimming lessons, this fear returned to him. However, he gathered confidence and went to the pool with his water wings. He watched the other boys and tried to learn by aping them. In the beginning, everything was going well till a big boy of 18 years picked him up and threw him into the deep end of the pool where he was sitting alone by the side, waiting for others. The writer landed in the sitting position and went to the bottom at once, swallowing a lot of water. He was terrified, but he had a plan. He decided that when he hit the bottom, he would make a big jump and come to the surface and lie flat on it and paddle to the end of the pool. But his plans didn't work exactly as he had hoped. It seemed a long way down before he could hit the bottom and his lungs were ready to burst. When his feet first came to the bottom, he attempted to summon all his strength and jump. He had hoped to come out of the water swiftly, but to his surprise, he was rather coming up really slowly. When he opened his eyes, all he saw was dirty yellow water. He tried to scream for help, but no sound came out as his eyes and nose came out of the water, but not his mouth. He tried to bring up his legs, but they seemed to be paralyzed. He sank to the bottom of the pool. The author was feeling dizzy and suffocated. His lungs and head ached, but he was unwilling to give up. He remembered his strategy. But when he went down, he opened his eyes and saw nothing but yellow glow of the water. He was yelling into the water, but he was frozen with fear. Amidst all the terror, he found a reason. Once again he jumped when he hit the bottom, but it wasn't useful. He was still surrounded by water. He trembled with fear as his hands and legs refused to move on. And then he saw light. His eyes were out. His nose was almost out as well. But then he was going down for the third time. And this time he stopped giving any effort. There was no more panic. Everything was quiet and peaceful, and he passed into oblivion. When his consciousness returned to him, he was lying on his stomach, vomiting. He heard someone say he nearly died. And this unfortunate incident had a negative impact on his mind and health. He walked home after several hours, but he couldn't eat. He was trembling, crying. And this fear haunted him, and he never went back to the pool. He was terrified for years. A few years later, he heard of the water of Cascades and wished to get into them, but his fear kept him from exploring. Whenever he was wading the Titan or Bumping River or bathing into the warm lakes of Goat Rocks, the unpleasant memory of the pool would return him and leave him paralyzed with fear. He was deprived of the joy of fishing, canoeing, boating, or swimming as a result of the terror. Finally, one October, he decided to learn swimming from an instructor. He practiced in a pool 5 days a week, an hour each day. The instructor put a belt around him, attached a rope to it, and he held on to the end of the rope as the author swam across the pool. The terror returned to the author every time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope. Gradually, he learned to exhale into the water and raise his nose and inhale. And eventually, putting his head under the water left him, and the instructor taught him to kick the water with his legs. At first, his legs didn't work properly, but then bit by bit, he could command them. And finally, in April, the instructor was convinced that he could swim. The length of the pool, he had created a swimmer. Despite the approval of the instructor, the author was dubious whether he would still be traumatized when he was alone in the pool. The fear did come back when he tried swimming alone, but he fought it by swimming longer. He was still not fully satisfied and decided to go to Wentworth in New Hampshire. He dived off a rock and Friggs Island and swam across 2 miles to Lake Stampak Islands. Only once did terror return, when he was in the middle of the lake, but he paid no heed to it. Yet, the author was not sure. At his first opportunity, he went up to the Titan, to Comrade Meadows, to the Conrad Creek, trail to the mid glaciers, and camped at a high meadow by the side of the warm lakes. Next morning, he swam across to the other shore and back. And for the first time, he was sure he had conquered fear. And this experience gave Douglas a great perspectives. He felt that only those who have known stark terror and conquered it can understand how he felt. He realized that there was peace in death, and the terror is only in the fear of death. And he experienced both the feeling of the death and the terror of the death. The terror that it can produce. Now that he had conquered fear, he felt absolutely free and released. Now that was the summary of the Deep Waters. Next we'll be continuing.
Thank you for watching. We'll continue in the next video.